The world right now is operating on a simple, measurable fact. Power decides outcomes. Consequences matter. Leverage matters. And enforcement, or lack of it, shapes every conflict. Today, we're going through the biggest crisis in the world and laying out the hard facts: who has control, who is weak, and what's really happening behind the headlines. After more than 2 years of violent confrontation, the conflict between Israel and Hamas has shifted from open war into a fragile, contested ceasefire and diplomatic negotiations. But the reality on the ground remains tense and deadly. A Gaza peace plan was negotiated and rolled out in late 2025 and came into effect in early October, called the Comprehensive Plan to End the Gaza Conflict. It was signed at an international conference with the United States, Israel, and other parties. The plan outlined a 20-point roadmap including ceasefires, prisoner exchanges, demilitarization, transitional governance, and reconstruction under international supervision. Despite formal ceasefire agreements, violence has not disappeared. According to reports from the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, since the ceasefire began, at least 394 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli Defense Forces actions, and over 70,000 total Palestinians have died since October 2023. The humanitarian situation remains dire, with food, water, medical care, and shelter still extremely scarce in Gaza, and hundreds of thousands of people facing emergency and even famine conditions. Ceasefires have been repeatedly interrupted by attacks. Israel has conducted missile strikes, including targeted assassinations of high-level commanders. Hamas has delayed the return of hostages despite agreements, and both sides have accused each other of violating ceasefire terms. This conflict has devastated infrastructure and displaced populations and shattered normal life. Even after formal peace agreements, the risk of renewed major fighting remains high. The toll on civilians continues. One casualty estimate group reported that in 2025, the war in Ukraine was the deadliest conflict in the world, with an estimated 78,000 people killed, including soldiers and civilians. This occurred despite multiple international peace initiatives throughout the year, including US brokered talks aimed at a settlement. Throughout the conflict, Russia has increased frontline offensives. Russian forces have continued missile and drone strikes against Ukrainian energy infrastructure, ports, and civilian facilities. Kiev and other major Ukrainian cities have suffered repeated attacks with significant civilian damage. Multiple rounds of negotiations, including discussions of temporary ceasefire, such as a 30-day pause proposed in talks hosted by international partners, have been floated by the US and Ukraine, though success has been limited, and fighting has continued even while talks occur. This war has reshaped Europe's security landscape, forced energy and defense reassignments, and created refugee and economic headwinds across the continent. The conflict is both a humanitarian crisis and a strategic confrontation with global implications. In October 2025, fighting erupted along the Afghanistan and Pakistan border, following escalating tensions after an airstrike in Kabul that the Taliban blamed on Pakistani forces. Days of clashes resulted in reports of casualties on both sides. In response to the violence, Pakistan and Afghanistan have agreed to a 48-hour ceasefire to de-escalate hostilities. This isn't an isolated border incident. It's part of a broader pattern that emerges when state authority weakens or is contested. Neighboring powers and militant groups test boundaries, leading to kinetic clashes in the absence of clear, sustained enforcement. Haiti continues to face one of the most acute state breakdowns in Western Hemisphere. Armed gangs control swaths of territory, dominate major cities, and exert brutal power through violence, displacement, and coercion. International humanitarian agencies have documented massive internal displacement. Hundreds of thousands are without secure housing, access to food or clean water, and gang violence remains a significant driver of instability. Reports highlight a drastic escalation in violence against children and civilians, with Haiti experiencing a near five-fold increase in verified grave violations against children, including killings and forced displacements amid the broader crisis. This is not just a humanitarian concern. It is a breakdown of governance. When gangs can tax, enforce law, and control blocks of territory with impunity, traditional state enforcement no longer controls outcomes. Ecuador has experienced a significant surge in gang violence, prompting government action in the form of states of emergency in multiple provinces. This wasn't a small security issue. Entire units of military police were mobilized domestically to supplement regular law enforcement because gangs have overwhelmed ordinary forces. This move illustrates how, in states with eroding local security capacity, the central government must project strength to reassert control. The alternative is lawless regions where criminal networks effectively impose their own rule. When we talk about the economy, the numbers matter. In 2025, the United Kingdom was projected to have the highest inflation rate in the G7, estimated at around 3.4%. Due to the persistent price pressures in energy, housing, and services, this was a structural inflation rate, not a short-term fluctuation. At the same time, in the United States, the average transaction price for a new vehicle rose above $46,000, marking a notable increase year over year and reflecting broader price level shifts in durable goods markets. These figures aren't abstract. They represent the real cost of living and influence wage demands, consumer confidence, interest rate decisions, and household budgeting. Economic weaknesses. Economic weakness, fiscal policy choices, and global supply disruptions all feed into these trends, and public expectations adapt accordingly. Once higher price norms are established, reversing them requires policy discipline that politicians often avoid for short-term political reasons. We also see how technology is shaping behavior worldwide. AI platforms are being integrated into event coordination systems with advanced matchmaking features, volunteer and school engagement platforms, economic and logistical systems that guide decision-making. These technologies don't just automate tasks. They gather data, shape incentives, and influence behavior. Who controls these systems has leverage without needing physical force. This is a type of power that is structural and enduring. Unlike a military margin, this is a platform influence that embeds itself into social, economic, and institutional workflows. So, what all this means? Across conflict zones and governments, a pattern emerges. Where authority is enforced effectively, chaos recedes. Where enforcement weakens, violence expands. Where economic incentives align with stability, markets adjust. Where technological control consolidates, power becomes subtle but entrenched. From long wars in Eastern Europe to fragile ceasefires in the Middle East, to state collapse in the Caribbean, to economic pressures in Europe and tech dominance worldwide. Every outcome flows from the same reality. Power sets the term, not intentions, not rhetoric, not repetition. Power and consequences, real ones.